Refilling the Swamp, this time on Right Angle. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode, as all, are brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com, whom you can join by going to BillWhittle.com right now and clicking that big green Become a Member button, or the button next to it that says Make a One-Time Donation. Gentlemen, I'm going to lead off this week with a two-part series on the way Joe Biden is building the team for his, as Steve calls it, alleged administration. As they are coming in, he is starting to name people whom he hopes will be confirmed to these various posts. And I don't want to get deeply into an analysis of individuals or whether they'll be good or bad in any particular role. But I did find it interesting that Team Biden is coming together much differently than Team Trump did at the beginning, whereas Trump seemed to revel in finding people who were sort of outside of the Washington stream. Joe Biden has gone to the well over and over again for Clinton administration, Obama administration, and his own, frankly, his own former staffers to populate his top White House positions, including chief of staff, as well as things like, national security positions, the Secretary of State position, and things like that. Stephen Green, it's interesting when you think about it, because you really, if you're in a federal political appointee position, you really only have a brief window of opportunity to be able to have an impact. And I'm wondering if you think it makes some sense to find people who can hit the ground running and won't have to push up against a bureaucratic wall of people who think, hey, I can outlast this guy. Does it make some sense to bring some old timers in who know how things run in D.C.?
Everybody knows how things run in D.C. It's a craptacular show, if you'll excuse my language. Listen, every single one of these federal departments is badly run, is bloated, has too much money, has too many powers, most of them given over by Congress willingly and all the rest. If you want a picture of official Washington, go to the one I was using back in 2009, early 2010 during the run-up to the passage of Obamacare into law. And I always pictured Nancy Pelosi with two cell phones, two smartphones, one in each hand. One had three numbers on speed dial. Barack Obama, of course, Steny Hoyer, her whip in the House, and Harry Reid over in the Senate. And so she could call them with minute-to-minute updates on putting this legislation together. And on the other phone, she had exactly one number on speed dial, and it was to her brokers, so she'd know who to short based on which section of the law would be screwing whoever over as it neared passage. Insider is just a fancy, nice-sounding word for corruption. That's about all it is.
Amen.
It means being able to get away with dealings with companies like Burisma. It means being able to get the guy fired for looking into Burisma. It means taking a lot of money for China and having people look the other way. That's how Washington works. And the people who know how to run it are the people who should be kept absolutely the furthest away from its levers of power.
Bill Whittle, even if Steve is right about all of that, and I'm not aware of any time in which he's been wrong about anything over the past 12 years. But even if he's right about all of that, when one brings in an outsider to run a government agency, by default, the real day-to-day stuff and the procedural stuff that most of us find boring but is actually essential to the way the government runs is being carried out by careerists anyway. And so you've got some guy who's nominally the head of HHS or nominally the head of HUD or something like that. But then the people who are running the business have been there for decades. Wouldn't it make more sense in general to do what Biden is doing and essentially say, let's find some people who actually know how to get things done, because I'm only going to get this brief window in time?
Well, if your goal is to have a smoothly running totalitarian state that takes taxpayers' money, is not accountable for how it's spent, has no respect for the law, no willingness to obey the law, violates the law on every level, if you want corruption and if you want not just not just corruption. Everybody talks about the election results. No one's talking about Hunter Biden's laptop and all of the payments that Joe Biden got, and the big guy got half and all the rest of it. So yes, if you're running a crime organization like that, you might as well go to where the criminals are. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? What do we know about some of these insiders and these lifelong politicians? Well, we know Hillary and Clinton and Bill Clinton put together $150 million fortune somehow by doing occasional speeches, and 6% of that money that they raised went to actual charities. And we know that the former head of the FBI is a guy who invented charges to impeach the president of the United States against the will of the people, against federal law, against everything that he swore an oath to. So yes, the more swamp you get, the more swamp you're going to get. And this is, of course, what Biden would be doing. The main reason is you got to find people who are also as guilty as you are, so that you have a mutual protection racket. And I'm not talking about the election now. I am talking about the charges and the evidence that is on Hunter Biden's laptop, and all of those allegations about kickbacks and money and all the rest of it. To me, any laptop that contains inside information, including emails, that has the president of the United States' personal phone number on it, and everybody else who matters, and photos of the person who allegedly owned the laptop in, let's just say, discrete private wealth distribution activities. When you have something with that degree of credibility, and you're talking about the wholesale buying of influence, then yeah, who else would you want but people from the swamp? I really just think at this point, I just have one wish remaining, and that is that they would just change the name of the city. Yeah. I wish they would just change the name. You can call it Bidenville if you want to. You can call it Obamaburg. I don't care. George Washington deserves better than to be named after this level of corruption and treason. He was as close to an uncorruptible politician as we are likely to see in history. There's maybe been 2 of them, in 3 of them in all of human history. And he deserves much, much, much better than to have his name tarnished by the kind of things that have gone on in Washington and continue to go on in Washington. And these things have gone on in politics forever, but they've never reached the level of industrialization, of mass production that we're seeing now. So yeah, take all the insiders you can, Joe. I'm sure that James Comey would make an excellent attorney general for you, because we know James Comey's not coming after you, Joe, because we see how these connections run. If I sound a little cynical, it's because I'm a little cynical.
Hey, Scott, can I throw in something really quick?
Sure, Steve.
Biden has been in Washington for 47 years. He knows how things work, which is probably why he went to the Governors Association to talk to them about COVID. I think this was over the weekend. And I have a transcript. I made this myself off the YouTube clip of what he had to say after this.
Was this the mayors or governors?
Governors.
Governors?
Governors. And Joe Biden said, again, if there are any errors in the transcript, I apologize. But if you can find any sense in here from Joe Biden, it's completely accidental. He said, we talked a lot about what the governors, about what the immediate needs are. We're going to employ the Defense Reconstructive Act to be able to go out there and dictate companies build and do following things. We need much more testing. We need much more masking. We need gloves. I asked them east to go and ask the National Governors Association through the Governor Cuomo and the ones on the line to let us know what their shortages are. We're going to get things done.
Do you know what one word stood out for me sharply in the middle of all of that gibberish?
Impose?
Can you guess? No, close.
Enforce?
No.
Which?
I'm going to go with dictate on that one.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to tell companies what they have to manufacture. We're going to use this bill that was designed to smooth up things during World War II to tell them what they need to manufacture. And that's what he'll do.
I think Steve Green could make money just selling tapes of him narrating passages from Joe Biden transcripts. I think in some ways that's a little more soothing than your average ASMR recording. So here's what I'm looking at, and I'm looking at this not from a political perspective, but from a purely managerial and leadership perspective. Donald Trump clearly took one approach to that, which was to say, if you're part of the establishment already, then you're part of the problem, and we need to bring somebody in who has a fresh take on that. Joe Biden seems to be saying that if you don't have any experience previously doing this, you're going to be stymied in your efforts to get something done. And we are, in his perception, tired of looking down on people who have experience and expertise as if they're part of the problem. But rather, these are people who know actually how the machine works, and you should bring in people like that. Both approaches have their strengths, but I really believe you kind of need a hybrid of those. Years ago, I worked with an organization. And when I started, the first week, I quickly determined that I needed to fire a veteran leader of that organization. And I didn't do it. And I waited several years, at which point I needed to fire that veteran leader of the organization. The reason why, and it's hard to tell really whether I made the right decision or the wrong decision, but the reason why I didn't fire that person was the institutional knowledge that person brought to the enterprise, and I certainly benefited from that. But the reason why I should have fired that individual was because of the stasis and the refusal to change, because the institution was more important in some ways than anything else, and seeing new opportunities to do things were anathema. And I think that's the challenge you run into as a leader. When you come in, if you have nothing but insiders and long-timers and lifers in the government business, then you think you've got a treasure, and you certainly do in terms of institutional knowledge, but it also may prevent you from being able to look at problems in ways that they have not been previously examined in the past 30 years. It's a problem that's going to face any incoming president. If Joe Biden winds up taking that oath of office on January 20th, as most people believe he will,
I don't.
He is, and that's why I said most people, and he is going to have that challenge in front of him. And you may wonder, well, why doesn't he just reach out? Because he certainly has connections on Wall Street and big business and stuff like that. He may. But that's not his natural swimming pool. That's not his natural circle of friends. And so he's less likely to reach out. And he may have actually tried to do that. In fact, his commerce secretary is likely going to be a CEO of a company. But the people who are in those positions also know him and think, do I really want to serve in an administration that has that view of business? I don't think so. We'll see that anybody gets 100 days to get their legs underneath them, and the Biden people seem to think that they're going to hit the ground running. Here's their chance. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.